So let's talk about Wales this summer, including that game against South Africa. Look at the big picture and look at all the players involved. Did they go up, down in the pecking order? Were their reputations improved or did they stay the same? And also, I've got to apologise for not getting out a match report on that last Saturday for Wales. It was just too busy on the day. But let's look at some of these big picture things. And yes, they lost both games, of course, but they were both contests. They were not thrashings. They were in the games. They could potentially have won one of them maybe, but I think Australia were the better team overall, although they were rebuilding. So in some ways it was a fairly good matchup because you had two sides that were rebuilding, although yes, they lost both games. And another big positive is there was lots of exposure for new players, for younger players. Gatland will have learnt plenty. Is this the team that then goes forward? Well, maybe not actually. I think next week I'm going to talk about teams that should be going into the autumn series, best teams. And I think Wales is still probably quite a long way from the best team they can field. So unfortunately for Welsh fans, I think this experiment may continue even longer. And I know some fans are getting fed up with this experiment phase, but I think it's just going to have to be gone through. Other positives, well, you've got to say their main strength was the maul. It was such a dangerous weapon. Australia just couldn't deal with it. So that's a good fundamental of the game. Other big themes, maybe on a more negative note, is both games, yes, they were lost. So psychologically, that's not a good thing. If you keep on losing, you do get down on yourself sometimes. It's 9 games in a row. And I do criticise the Welsh booking sometimes. I mean, of fixtures, their fixture list, if you like. I think sometimes they just don't give themselves a break. I think the ideal tour would have been a developmental tour like Scotland did, taking these young players to, say, North America and doing those games that Scotland did. And Wales, of course, now drop outside the top 10 in the world, which sure is not good for a pride thing, but also when a World Cup draw comes around, you're probably going to be in the third bag of draws, if you like. So you do want to be inside that top 10. Obviously, right now, not so important, but that's something to think about. Another negative is the feeling towards Warren Gatland a little thin on the ground? Maybe he'd argue he didn't have much to work with, he had lots of injuries, it's a tricky time, but certainly that buzz maybe around Gatland isn't so good. Now, another point that may be a positive or a negative following on from my British and Irish Lions video is maybe the number of tourists for Wales could be quite low. So from a reputation sort of thing, yes, that would be disappointing, but also maybe they wouldn't get so knackered on the tour. You could take them on a developmental tour. So maybe there's two sides to that. And also I'd say the main tactical thing is the midfield didn't work at all for me. That penetration, that deception in midfield, I think they need to go back to the drawing board. And when I come out with the best team I think they should field for the autumn, we'll talk about that. Looking ahead to the autumn briefly, can they break their losing run? That's going to be the headline. Well, the first game looks like the big game where they could do that. You've got Fiji, who are going to be very good. Of course, they've got the Fijian Drua players, that core of club players now, which makes them better to just jump into games and be coordinated. But it's definitely going to be a big chance to get a win, to break that run of losses. And then they have Australia, revenge time. Can they, say, get a win against Fiji, then a revenge win against Australia? That would be great. And then South Africa's going to be tough to win, but if they got those first 2 wins, I think that would be a pretty good autumn. So there is maybe light on the horizon. So let's have a look at the players involved in the summer. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Equals, where I think their reputation stays the same. Up for up, down for down. In the loosehead side, I don't think many reputations were raised. Gareth Thomas, I thought, was poor until that last game. Hooker, Lake has shown his power, his size. He's an absolute beast. He's not perfect. He made some mistakes in the carry, in the line-out, but he is definitely the number one. Are Daniel and Lloyd going to be there in the long term? I still don't know. Tight head, I think, is a little bit looser. Azarati got destroyed in that South Africa game. I didn't think much of O'Connor, but young Archie Griffin, he was very impressive considering he doesn't even play for Bath yet. He's kind of number 3 choice, if you like, 3rd choice. So he doesn't play ahead of Stewart and Thomas Totoy, but he's definitely one for the future. Does he continue to start? I don't know, but he's definitely going to be good enough for sure. Lewis didn't play, which is a shame. They could have done with him. Second row wise, we saw more of Carter, so I think his reputation goes up a bit, although I'm not 100% sold on him. They had to bring Corey Hill back from Japan. I think he's like in the 4th division it seemed a bit desperate, and he's not really up to the speed, I don't think, of international rugby, so I think he goes down a bit, but he was kind of called in as an emergency. Jenkins is pretty solid. I think he stays the same. We knew he was pretty decent. Screech goes up because he played for Wales, and you wouldn't expect him to. He's kind of saved by the bell because they were short of second rows. Ratty we didn't see a lot of. I know Schwinter's in the back row section there, but he played in the second row, and he showed he's got the physicality to do that. Looks like a real beast, so his reputation goes up. Botham, I'm still not sure he's quite up to this level, although he's a hard worker. Plumtree's reputation went up to show he can play 6 and 8, and he can mix it with the best, I think. Rafael we still know is a class open side. I wouldn't say he went up though, and Wainwright, his ball carrying was so important. A big miss when he wasn't there, so I think his reputation went up. Bevan got plenty of exposure, showed good basics. Is he going to be a great Welsh 9? I'm not so sure. I think Costello has to go down in his reputation because he wasn't trusted to be the starter, and you thought he was going to be the main man. But not so. I think he's pretty tricky coming off the bench. It could be a good way to go, to have a steady starter, and then the devious nature of Costello coming off the bench doing unpredictable things. In the centres, has the Mason Grady experiment run its course at 12? He doesn't look quite at home there with the handling, with the defending. Maybe use him differently, so unfortunately he goes down. We didn't see James. Ben Thomas was used at 10, so his reputation goes up, and he was very solid, really good goal kicking. Over expectations for him. Tompkins looks like he's kind of lost his way a bit. Maybe his time has gone. Not the force he was. Watkin was trusted, so I think his reputation has to go up. I'm still not sure he's a top level centre, but the fact he played a lot, whereas previously he wouldn't, I guess raises his reputation. Dyer did okay in that last test there, so I think it keeps him equal. Looks a little tired in some of the other tests. Grace wasn't used. Hathaway had his introduction to international rugby and it didn't go well, so he goes down, but I imagine he'll be back at some point. Dylan Williams showed he's still class, and he was class before, so he stays the same. Beetham, not overly used, and Winnett played that last test against Australia and had a bit of a shocker. So it's a real mixed bag for the Welsh there against Australia, and that South Africa game as well. Who carries on in the Welsh team? Well, I don't think it's going to be all of them. Let me know what you think. Who went up, who went down, who stayed the same? Where are Wales right now? It's a tricky one. Did they make progress? Yeah, I think they did make a bit of progress. They were hard to beat. It was a good contest. Have they nailed their team? Have they nailed their style of play? Well, no, I don't think so. The experiment continues with Gatland. I think in the autumn we're going to see lots of changes, and maybe they'll get settled in time for the Six Nations next year. Anyway, do like, do subscribe. That would be awesome. Pop all those comments below, and I'll catch you next time.